Betty, where are we?
On your front porch.
Front porch. You know what? When I was a boy, we didn't have these little things here. I don't know what they call these, because in those days you had big front porches because you really wanted to meet people. Yeah, so you could visit people, meet with them, talk with them. Today, there's these little front porches and the backyard's big. So I don't know if that means no solicitors at any times, or whether it means we don't really like talking with our neighbors much anymore. I'm not sure I understand why houses are built this way today. But the beautiful thing about the church is all churches have what you might call big front porches. And that's because we want people to come in. Well, it was kind of that way, Betty, a long time ago. Many people didn't have the privilege of living in nice houses like you and I do. But they spent time together. And once upon a time, the primary place to meet everybody was in church. But right now, especially during this pandemic, there are people, terrible people, not so many people going to church, but do they still go to the grocery store? Do they still go to amusement parks? Yeah. Do they still go to, what else?
Right now, Hawaiian Falls and
Hawaiian Falls.
and Great Wolf Lodge is open.
Great Wolf Lodge is open, yeah. Well, so, it gives us a chance to think a little bit, doesn't it,
So
folks?
it's kind of like water parks.
Yeah, water parks are kind of open.
And hotels.
So what do you think? If I put an inflatable swimming pool in front of the church, then do you think more people would come because it would be safe? No, I don't think so either.
They would probably just be like, "Ooh, let's just swim in this pool and not go in."
I know. But I'm proud of you because you've been very, very faithful in a lot of different ways, Betty. And you know what I was thinking about? This has been a really amazing week for you. Because after Labor Day was this past Monday, I think. Yeah. And then Tuesday, something for you happened.
I got to go to school.
You got to go to school? Up till then, everything was on.
Why?
You having trouble with those mosquitoes?
Yes.
But let me tell you, Betty, this is just like life. Just when you think you have everything pulled together and you've got it the way you want it, a mosquito comes. That's the way life
Mom was
is.
sucking me the other day.
A mosquito was sucking you?
It was either yesterday or Thursday.
What was it looking for?
Ah!
What?
There was one on me.
Okay. Hey guys. Hey guys.
No,
No.
I don't want.
Brother
my
and
dogs
sister,
to.
brother and sister mosquito, do me a favor. Betty and I want to do some time together with the good people out there. Do you think you could go someplace for a while and then you could come back later? Thank you. Thank you.
I
Yeah.
don't know if they're saying yes or not.
Well, in the name of Jesus, I asked them, and everybody's supposed to bow at the name of bow and go down to their knee at the name of Jesus. Do you know that why? Do you know why people take the knee? Because the Bible says at the name of Jesus, every knee shall bow. So when people go down on their knee, they must be going down for Jesus, right? Okay, good. Now, here we have the story of Ruth. Say Ruth. Okay. Now, Ruth lived even before Babe Ruth lived. I mean, this is really a long time ago. And so, toward the close of the period of the Judges, remember we talked about Judges last week, there was a Jew by the name of Elimelech. Elimelech. Well, that sounds like you could have a song. Elimelech, 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 Elimelech. Whose wife was Naomi. He had two sons named Mahlon and Chilion. There was a famine in the land, and Elimelech took his family and moved to Moab, where times weren't so hard. So, their sons Mahlon and Chilion married Moabite girls. That's kind of like Texans when they go to Oklahoma and marry somebody from Oklahoma. And so what happens is, leaving their three wives as widows, Because what happened? Oh my goodness, this is bad news. They all lived in Moab for about 10 years. Finally, Elimelech and Mahlon and Chilion died, leaving their 3 wives as widows, as I just said. But think about that. Word had drifted into Moab that times were better over in the land of the Jews, and Naomi was determined to return to the land of kinfolk. She called her daughters-in-law to her and told them what was going to happen, that she was going to do. And she said, I'm sorry as I can be to part company with you, for you both have been like daughters to me. And I love you both. But the sensible thing for you to do is to remain here in Moab, and perhaps you can find another husband among your own people. Now, I have a suggestion for you. What are you sitting on? This is what we call improvising. Please stand up. Grab that blanket. Push the pillow back. Wrap that around you the way you feel most comfortable, and say, God bless you to all the mosquitoes. All right? You don't need to spray anything. So here you go. Well, both girls carried on something awful because they loved Naomi, and they didn't like to think being separated from her. Orpah saw the wisdom of Naomi's way of thinking, so she kissed her mother-in-law goodbye and returned to her own people. But the girl named Ruth decided she'd throw in her lot with Naomi. Now, do you know what a mother-in-law is?
Is it if you're married to somebody and it's their mother?
Yeah, so think about it. Does your daddy have a mother-in-law? Yeah, who's his mother-in-law?
Nana.
Your Nana. That's right.
And then you're his father.
That's right. I'm your daddy's father-in-law. But you know, in our family, we don't do that. In fact, let's show something here. Let's check this out. You know that I was made a bishop in 1994. I was consecrated. And this was the cross that was given to me by some people, but a priest in England came over from the shrine of Our Lady of Walsingham and SSC, don't worry about it. And he then put this around my neck. But I got it away from him before I was consecrated. And I put 4 names on here. Who would they be? 1994. Your Nana, your mom, your Aunt Renee, Uncle Keith. So my 3 children and my sweet wife, your Nana, are on there. But I left a big space, so tell me about it. On the big space, you see.
My name is the baby.
Would everybody hear that? There are 4 names in the middle that I had added each time they were born. And the biggest one on there is
Me.
you.
So there's Ellie, Dominic, Natalie, and
Now the reason for that, even though I wear the cross outside a lot, bishops usually wear their crosses in their pocket when they're running around so that it won't break. Remember what happened to me today when we went to the store? My cross got stuck in the push cart and it broke it. So one day somebody said to me, you bishops shouldn't wear your crosses in your pockets. You should have them out so everybody can see them. And I say to them, they are right, but they apparently don't know what it's like to push a shopping cart. So here we have it with your name because we're family. But what happened is Ruth wanted to keep her daughters-in-law. So one left and another one stuck around, and she's the one named Ruth. So what happened is Ruth said, entreat me not to leave thee or to return from following after thee, for whither thou goest, I will go. And where thou lodgest, that means sleep, I will lodge. Thy people shall be my people, and thy God my God. Wherever you die, that's where I want to die and be buried. Nothing but death is ever going to separate us. And you see, that's kind of what I said to your Aunt Donna when she married your Uncle Keith, and to your Uncle Ethan when he married your Aunt Renee, and to your daddy when he married your mommy. You could forget the in-law part, because the second you get married, you're my son, you're my daughter. And that's because in a family we have to be drawn together, especially when we're Christians. And especially in the age today where Christians are being persecuted, we need to stick together. Christians are being killed, I hate to tell you this, every day, just because they believe in Jesus. And some of the people who kill them...
Who is doing that?
Well, and some of the people killing them really don't believe in Jesus. And that's part of the problem. So, well...
Who do they think that made them?
They have a totally different point of view. And sometimes in the world in which we live today, people think you can't tell everybody what you really believe. Now, they can tell you what their favorite car is. They can tell you what their favorite food is. They can tell you what their favorite restaurant is. But if you tell them that Jesus is your Lord, that upsets some people. And you know what? You know what my answer to that is? I am so sorry for you. So now we have Ruth, who is seriously a part of this family. Now, Naomi saw that Ruth really meant what she said, so she told her, well then, if you're going to stick around, pack up your things and let's get going. They came to Naomi's hometown, which was, you're going to believe this, well, you're going to believe this. Ready?
Yeah.
Very famous town where she went to her hometown, Naomi. Begins with a B. It's one of the favorite places for people to go when they go to the Holy Land, because somebody was born there named Jesus. And this is where Naomi is from when we sing, "Oh, little town of Bethlehem." See?
I know it.
I know you know it.
Well, I know the song, so I know it was going to be Bethlehem.
Betty, I knew you would. Maybe that's why your name is the biggest name on the cross, do you think? Okay.
Because it starts with a B and Bethlehem.
Uh-huh. You ever thought about that before? Yeah. That's pretty cool. Well, then pack your things, let's get going. So they went to Bethlehem, and all her old neighbors and kinsfolk had quite a reception for her. Naomi, however, was sad to come back to the scene of her early happiness because she had lost her husband and both her sons. It was about the time of the barley harvest. That meant they went out and cut down all the grain so that they could start making bread. When Naomi and Ruth came to the town, and since they didn't have a job and had to eat, Ruth decided she'd go out in the fields and glean. In other words, get a job.
Wait, did they only have bread?
Well, they had a lot more than bread, but barley bread is one of the most basic breads over there. You know how all this honey wheat and adding all those things, you know, we go shopping and get bread for Nana? Well, they didn't add all of those preservatives in their bread.
I just like white bread.
I know you do.
Because I don't really like wheat bread.
Well, listen, your Swedish family, your Italian family, and your Welsh family made lots of bread. Good bread. But I don't remember any barley bread. So, Ruth is out there. She is gleaning, which means she's going around after the harvesters and picking up the grain they drop and waste. It was a pious custom among the Jews that poor people were allowed to do this. So if there was grain lying on the ground, they were allowed to get it because they couldn't afford to buy it because they were poor. So they picked it up, and what did they do? They then were able to leave with it some of the harvesters in the field for the poor. And some of the harvest was left there in case somebody else came along. Now, when I was a little boy, in a place near Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Many of us were poor, and we had to heat our houses because it gets cold there. And you know what we used to heat our houses?
Candles?
Coal. And sometimes we
So
couldn't
you can
afford the
make
coal.
a fire?
Uh-huh. So what happened is, we would go down by the railroad tracks after all the coal cars came by, and we would take our buckets, and we were allowed to pick up all the coal that had fallen
That's
out
nice.
and take it home. Yeah, it was nice. So we carry home the buckets of coal that fell off the train, and that's what we used to heat our houses. So it's very much the same way here.
So you could just, if you had one, you could get a light thing.
Uh-huh. Yeah, and we put it in our furnace, and that's how we heated our house. So, Elimelech had a cousin who was a very wealthy farmer, a man named Boaz. And Ruth just happened to pick out his farm to do her cleaning. That's where she said, you know what, I like the grain there. Boaz, naturally, was out supervising his harvesters. He saw Ruth and he said to his foreman, who's that beautiful woman over there? It so happened that the foreman knew, and he said, well, it's the Moabite girl that came home with Naomi. Now, Boaz had heard about how Ruth had left her home and country and had come back with Naomi. And he was pretty impressed by her loyalty to her mother-in-law. So, he went up to Ruth and introduced himself, saying, hello, Miss Ruth. I want to glean the grain. I want you to glean it from my harvest. You can get all of it from my farm. I have instructed my reapers, the fellows that did that hard work, to be nice to you. And whenever you want to drink, help yourself to it from the water barrel over there. And at lunchtime, Boaz invited Ruth to come sit in the shade of a tree and share his own picnic lunch.
There's too many mosquitoes.
Honey, I can't help it that you're so sweet. When you're that sweet, you draw mosquitoes. So, they want a nice bite. And so, after lunch, Ruth went back to work in the field. Boaz told his reapers to watch out for her and leave a lot of the grain on purpose where she could pick it up and she would have plenty. When Ruth got home that night, her mother-in-law was astonished at how much barley she had gleaned, and Ruth told her all that had happened and how she had gleaned in the fields of a man named Boaz and had had lunch with him. And Naomi said, the Lord be praised, Boaz is our kinsman. You do like the man said, and work in the fields. Don't go anywhere else until the end of the harvest. Naomi was pretty shrewd, and she could see the beginning of a romance starting here. And so she figured that Boaz would marry Ruth. It would be a very fine thing for the widow. So Ruth went back to Boaz's farm day after day and gleaned. And each day she brought back far more barley than the ordinary gleaners found. She had a chance every so often to exchange a few words with Boaz. And they got to be very friendly. However, I wouldn't have you think that Ruth was a flighty, scatterbrained girl who didn't tend to her work. No, sir, or no, ma'am. She was a good, steady, hardworking young woman. And Boaz was very impressed with her. Naomi watched the ripening of this relationship and was on hand to advise Ruth about the ways of country. Ruth, said Naomi, at the end of the harvest, they always throw a big party to celebrate. Everybody's relaxed and in good humor. It's informal and you don't have to have an invitation. You have been working right along with the harvesters, so why don't you go to the party? Go right up to Mr. Boaz and don't be bashful a bit. Are you ever bashful?
What does that mean?
Well, it's kind of like being shy. You know what, sweetheart? I have 4 grandchildren, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And
I
I'm
do.
one of them.
You are. And I don't think that the word bashful is going to be one of the words that people are going to use when they think about you. And so, Ruth dressed herself up in her prettiest clothes and went to the party. Sure enough, she and Boaz paired off and talked together all night long. And by the morning, Mr. Boaz had made up his mind he wants to have Ruth as his wife. Yeah. However, they had a custom among the Jews that when a girl was a widow, that means that her husband had died, the nearest of kin to her husband, who was single, was supposed to marry her and look after her. The Jews took their family responsibilities seriously and provided for the widows of their near kin in this way. There was a man who was even closer a relative or kin to Elimelech than Boaz. And naturally, this was the man who, according to custom, should have married Ruth. Boaz couldn't ask her to marry him until this other man had had a chance. So, Boaz called together some of the principal men of Bethlehem to act as witnesses, and he called this other cousin in, and in front of the witness, he explained what had happened. That Elimelech had gone to Moab, and his son had married this girl named Ruth, and the menfolk had died, and Ruth and Naomi had come home, and how everybody ought to marry Ruth and take care of her. Somebody needs to do that, he said. Well, this other cousin stammered and stuttered and hemmed and hawed and shuffled his feet, didn't know what to say. He didn't know Ruth. And so she was, after all, as he said, a foreigner. Well, almost every one of your great-grandparents was not born in the United States. They were all born in other countries. And so that means they come from foreign land.
Italy.
Yeah? Sweden, Wales, Italy, Sweden. You're a roll. This is very true.
I know where our family is from.
You do know where our family is from. And it's fun to talk about that because that shows how blessed we are to have had the opportunity to come into the land of the free. So what happened is, Boaz then went to Ruth because something happened. Here's the deal. You see, here is this man's not sure. He didn't know Ruth, as I said. He was a foreigner. For all he knew, Ruth might have had the disposition of a witch with a bad cold.
Oh, wait.
She might have been nasty because this man didn't know her. So, he was extremely relieved when Boaz said to him, well, you know, if you don't want to do your duty by your cousin, guess what? I will. He wanted to. And so in front of all the witnesses, this other character said he'd be much obliged if Boaz would take this responsibility off his hands. And of course, Boaz said, you bet. Because he wanted to marry Ruth, didn't he? Yep. So, Boaz then went to Ruth and asked her to marry him. And Ruth said, sure. For she had figured it out that way all along. So, they were married, and Naomi came to live with them. And their problem of how to get along was solved. After a while, Ruth had a baby boy. Yep. And Naomi, like most grandmothers, even though this wasn't her real daughter, right? Because it was her daughter-in-law, and her daughter-in-law married someone else. She loved her so much because they were family. And so she took on over him like he was the only baby that had ever been born. She helped with the nursing and babysitting, and I guess you can say that they all lived happily ever after. Now you gotta listen to this. This is like unbelievable. You ready for this? By a curious coincidence, the baby boy that was born to Boaz and Ruth turned out to be the grandfather of King David, the famous King David. That's right. And they're in Bethlehem. The baby's name was Obed. And he grew up and married and had a son named Jesse, who was the father of David. That's how David happened to be born in Bethlehem. And for that matter, that's how Jesus came to be born in Bethlehem. Yep, because Jesus was from that house and lineage of David. So you see, these people we've been talking about, Boaz, and Ruth and Naomi and Elimelech were the great, 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 and a whole string of greats, grandparents of Jesus. Now, how do you like that story? Isn't it exciting?
I think Naomi and Ruth are actually people actually named their kids that.
I think that's right. And you've heard those names.
Yes.
You don't have a lot of friends named Elimelech, though. No.
I know actors named Ruth.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh. And you know anybody named Naomi?
No, but I think that's just
It is. It's a good name. You get to see it. There's some singers and actors that we could read about who have that name. So it's been a really popular name. But, you know, that's the thing we need to think about. If we really, really pray about who we marry, you never can imagine the precious things that come out. If your mom and dad had never met at camp,
I probably wouldn't be here now.
that's right. If Nana and your mommy and dad and uncle and aunt had never moved from Pennsylvania to Texas so that Papa could have a church in Texas, then your mommy would have never gone to camp. She would never have met your,
Dad
and you,
would never be alive.
and we couldn't have the show we're having today.
Yeah. Well, you could probably still do it with Ellie or Natalia. Or Donna.
But guess what? Your Aunt Renee met your Uncle Ethan in Texas.
Oh.
And even though your Aunt Donna's from Pittsburgh, just like her husband, Uncle Keith, they met in Texas. So here's what I want you to think about.
So none of us would be alive
That's right.
if he didn't move to Texas.
That's right. Now here's what I'm going to say to you. Have you been praying for your husband lately?
No,
Why can't you pray for your husband?
because I'm a child.
But guess what? He's the man you're going to marry someday might be alive right now. Wouldn't you think?
No.
We don't know his name.
Because we don't know.
But every night before you go to sleep, why don't you pray for your future husband? Because you need to marry a man who loves you, who is going to follow Jesus, or you can be like your mommy. You know what she said? He has to love Jesus and he has to like baseball.
Or I could just make him.
So pray for him now. And Betty, I'm sure glad you're back in school. And I'm sure glad that life is making a little nice things. I am also happy that the mosquitoes found out something about you. You're sweet, because if they had asked me, I would have told them ahead of time that you were sweet. I love you.
No, because they might. Well, you shouldn't, because they would probably want to bite me even more.
That's probably true. But you know what I think? I think Naomi must have been sweet. I think that Ruth must have been sweet.
I think they're like little bats,
Yeah.
like bug bats.
So what do you think, honey?
Because
I think this is something we need to explain to people. And that is, this is what Christians need to do. We need to gather. And we need to gather so we can remind each other how special God is to us. God bless all of you. I love getting together with you, and welcome to our front porch. Betty, say bye to everybody. She's waving. Bye.